Hi, and welcome back to the Relationship School's Smart Couple podcast. The book is out, the Smart Couple Quote Book. Go to relationshipschool.net/smart couple to order yours on Amazon. All right. I think it's going to change your life in just a few minutes a day. It's not a big, complicated relationship book. Okay. This is timeless wisdom to throw in as a stocking stuffer for the holidays. This can really help people, okay? Go check it out and leave us a review if you feel so inspired. All right. This podcast is all about growing and developing yourself through intimacy and long-term partnership. We interview a number of people, my wife, relationship experts, attachment people, sexperts, couples, and past participants of programs, all with the aim of trying to help you with your long-term relationship life. Because we're with the Harvard study in that the quality of your long-term relationship is a really excellent predictor of your life satisfaction. Okay. I mean, there's nothing worse than not wanting to come home because you're completely at odds with your life partner. That sucks. Okay, so if that's you, we're here to help you. All right, in the month of December, quick announcement, and then I'll get right to our guest. We are doing a number of free web classes for you. Okay, just make sure that you are on our list. And just by signing up for our email list, you can get a scorecard that's going to assess your relationship health. All right, go to relationshipschool.net/scorecard. And this scorecard can be done in just a few minutes with your partner or in relationship to your ex-partner. You'll get a take on how well you do intimate relationships, and it'll tell you exactly where your weak spots are, okay, and where you're strong. And so I would recommend if you're score below an 80 and you need some help, then you come to the relationship school and you study, okay, and you train, because that's the way to improve your score, people. It doesn't just magically happen by meeting the right person, sorry to say. And we're talking years into a relationship, all right? It's what happens every day after years of being in a relationship. Okay. Our next guest is a controversial guest by the name of John Gray. You might have heard of him. He wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And I've been really intrigued about this guy for a number of years because he's just gotten a lot of press, and Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus became a bestseller. I mean, it hit the collective in a big way. Obviously, it resonated if there was millions and millions of copies sold, okay? So this guy is controversial because he is extremely opinionated about polarity in relationship and what it does to hormones. So in this episode, you're going to get a really big take, okay? And I'm going to offer my 2 cents after having dove into his book after I did this interview. I can't believe I didn't read his book before this interview. That was completely backwards for me. But I was so intrigued that I immediately bought his book and started devouring his book. And I'm like, whoa, okay, he's definitely got a lot of beautiful, extremely helpful frames. And it's not going to resonate for some of you, okay? Some of you do not resonate with terms masculine and feminine, which makes total sense. But when I have guests that use the term masculine and feminine, what I notice is a few people get upset. So that might be you. So just notice that, work with yourself. And again, if this does not resonate for you, I understand. Okay. I like to have a lot of variety here. If it was really just my podcast with my voice, I think you would get really served, but you would be missing some things. I think having other perspectives, other experts have been doing this for years, decades, that do amazing work with people. It's like, why not learn from them? So I'm learning from each guest I have on the show. I always learn at least one thing. And if I don't, I go purchase their book or I devour their material until I learn something. So I have something to learn from everybody here, and it's really useful for me as and it widens and strengthens the things I teach. So, okay, a little bit about John Gray. He's the author of the most well-known and trusted relationship book of all time. This is according to his bio, of course. Very biased. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. USA Today listed his book as one of the most top 10 influential books of the last quarter century. Okay. In hardcover, it was the #1 best-selling book of the 90s. He's written over 20 books. And his most recent book, Beyond Mars and Venus, he looks at what I'm learning from the book. I'm not all the way done yet, but I learned the deeper dive into the hormones and why men will, if they're doing what he calls feminine activities, it will increase their estrogen and decrease their testosterone, thus impacting his relationship life. And for women, if they work too much and they don't do the relational thing very well, they're increasing their testosterone and decreasing estrogen, which again impacts their partner and their health. So he's got a really interesting take here, and I'm psyched for you to learn and dive into this and see what you think. Okay, I really want your comments below. Social media are the best places to leave those, and right below the blog post on the relationshipschool.net website, and in the Smart Couple Monogamy Facebook group, okay? That is private, that you are welcome to join. So those are the 3 best places to leave comments. Send us an email with feedback. That's always great. But it's even better if you can leave it on social media, because then it engages other people and they talk and they go, yeah, but, or yeah, totally. And they either disagree or they agree, and it starts a really rich conversation, okay? All right. Obviously, he's taught lots of workshops. He's appeared repeatedly on Oprah, as well as the Dr. Oz show today, CBS This Morning, Good Morning America. He's been profiled in Time, Forbes, USA Today. Okay, this guy has a lot of influence in the relationship space, and it's really cool to be able to interview someone with so much experience here. And he's so clear about his view, right? And you'll notice I ask him a question at the very end about attachment and neurobiology, and it's really interesting what he says. So pay attention to that near the end of the interview, okay? All right, folks, and then, of course, listen to the end for your action step and my further comments on the episode. Okay, here we go with Mr. John Gray. Welcome to the show, John Gray.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, John. Man, you're just a wealth of information, so I'm excited to dig in here and mine your mind and body for all that you've learned about relationships and intimacy over the years. So will you tell us a little bit about who you are, just so the listener, I mean, I think most people on the planet that are at least listening to this podcast, have probably heard about the book, Women Are From Mars, or Venus, Men Are From Mars. So give us a sense of who are you outside of that?
Well, I've been married 32 years. I've got 3 daughters, 2 are stepdaughters. I was previously married about 35 years ago for a couple of years to a good friend. And we were kind of like business partners, not necessarily soulmates. Okay. So I kind of have the experience of one relationship ending and learning from that. And that's after that relationship ended is when I reevaluated the relationship and really saw how important it was for me to recognize the differences between men and women. Because in my first marriage, we were not doing that. You know, I was expecting her to think like men and me to think like women. And that was just a disaster. So I was able to back off from that. And I was deeply in love, but we really weren't compatible partners anyway. I wanted to have children. And when I married her, I told her I didn't want children. So it was my shift inside of me. So I know that some relationships are not the right ones, but over the years, I've certainly helped a lot of people discover that their own relationship can be. And I think that was the popularity of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, is so much of the time, if we can just understand better where our partners are coming from, when there's a misunderstanding, we can reconnect. Because when you don't feel understood, or when you keep sort of knocking your head against the wall trying to walk through a door that doesn't exist, you lose hope. And when you lose hope in a relationship, your heart closes and you stop feeling the love. So getting back to that place of understanding, a sense of accountability of how we contribute to the problems in our relationships, frees us to feel hope again. Because if I can't change my partner, I can change something inside of me. I can change the way I look at things. And if things change in the outer world as a result of that, then I have hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I want to get into your books, but I want to backtrack a little bit and just get a little more on your personal story. I read your story on your website, which I recommend the listener do. It's really amazing, just in terms of your life experience and what you've been through and how you grew up. Will you give the listener a sense of how you got into this whole relationship work? Like, how did you become just a best-selling author and a person who's counseled thousands of people now on their relationships? Like, when did that start and what happened?
Well, I grew up in Houston, Texas. My mother had a spiritual bookstore. And I think my whole life, I have the foundation, which helped me a lot. My mother was a very happy, fulfilled woman. And so my parents had a good relationship. So I never even thought people had problems in their parents. I mean, it was very harmonious, largely due to my mother, I would say, having this spiritual awareness, which is, she really experienced that you always have what you need in life. And when you think you don't, you're looking in the wrong direction. And that, to a great extent, is still imbibed in my message. Because, what we need to bring forth in a relationship is primarily within ourselves. And there's so many sources of support in our lives. And often we look to our partners to be perfect or to be more than what they are, because we're not looking within ourselves to be more than what we are. And, that personal development and so forth. So my life was dedicated to that. And at 18, the Beatles, we were all getting high in the 60s, and the Beatles went to India, and they said, hey, you can get high without taking drugs. And I said, well, that's fantastic. And so I got on a plane to hopefully to see the Beatles, but also to study with their guru, Maharishi. Well, I stayed with the Maharishi for 9 years. I was fascinated by him. I was totally inspired by him, primarily because he was an example of a man who was powerful, influential, but loving and having fun and spiritual. I thought that was really a great role model for me. And then my brother was bipolar, and meditation. Maharishi was the founder of the Transcendental Meditation movement, which is actually experiencing a big resurgence now around the world.
Yeah.
But he was the founder of that. And I was, a teacher of teachers there as his personal assistant, and became his main teacher. I was just a very dedicated student. I was a celibate monk. I had no relationships with women other than to teach audiences. But meditation didn't help my brother, who was bipolar. Helped a little bit. And so I basically had to give up all that. I mean, I still meditate, but I flew out to California to study psychology, hoping that psychology would heal my brother. That didn't work either. Eventually, my brother committed suicide. But along the way, I learned psychology. And when I was learning psychology, I realized that I had a very different point of view from what I was learning. And it was helping the couples that I was counseling. So I was basically going by instinct, or what I would say common sense. Does that make sense? That makes sense. It's all common sense once you step out of this paradigm that people are trying to see equality through sameness, rather than recognizing equality by honoring and respecting differences. That's what real equality is.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And like you said earlier, people just want to be understood, right? And feel understood. And we can only do that if we acknowledge that we're probably different.
And not only that's a need that we have for sure, but if I'm trying to navigate a trip, I need to know the map to get there. And if I keep going in the wrong direction, I feel frustrated, but really I'm following the wrong map. And back in the 60s and 70s, the map, and to a certain extent still, the map for making relationships better is always to try to change our partners into becoming more like ourselves, to think like we do, to react the way we do. And that's not always helpful. Matter of fact, it's counterproductive. So, because I had sort of my own source of knowledge within myself. I really trust logic and common sense and what works and what doesn't work. And I had a different perspective, and I still do, which is if my wife is upsetting me, which every wife can do. I mean, your soulmate has the only person on the planet has the power to upset you. And when you get close to somebody, you have no barriers against them. You're having sex with them. So if they have a disappointment with you or a rejection of you or disapproval of you, it goes right in. You have very few defenses against that. If other people have it, you have way more defenses. But if you're kind of like one with your partner, there's very little defense. But for me, because of my foundation and all those years of celibacy and meditation, I found happiness within myself. And I can always go to that place inside. So she could upset me, and I would just go off in my cave and meditate and come back to my place of love. And from a place of love and openness, I was able to look at contributed to the problem. I could also see how she contributed to the problem, but more importantly, I saw how I could, and then I can make adjustments. And that's why my books are so popular, is because they really help people see things not from the point of view of blame. It's a non-judgmental approach.
Yeah.
Whatever. And basically, whenever you're judging your partner, you're going to get less. It's as simple as that. That love is not judging.
Yeah.
I mean, there is right and wrong in the world for sure. But when you have love, you work on, okay, what's going to work in this situation, as opposed to you're wrong, you have to change before things can get better. No, it's wait a second. You did something that upset me, bothered me, didn't give me what I want, need, whatever. I have the power to turn around, find my happiness again within myself, and come back and give more love. But the key to this giving more love is giving the partner what they really need, not what we think they need. Like women will often give men advice. I thinking you're being loving. Most men hate that. And, men will give women advice. The difference here, quite commonly still, is that when men give advice, we're always sort of explaining to women, you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't feel that way. Women don't like that. So stop it. It just doesn't work. And women want to give men advice. You should do this. You should do that. Why would you do that? I can't believe you would say that. All that advice is just going to push buttons inside of him and push him further away. And so when you can really, in a non-judgmental way, step back and point out to people, what you're doing just doesn't work. Why do you keep doing it? You keep doing the same thing, thinking you're going to get some result. You don't get a result. It doesn't work. But they often don't know what does work. And that's what my work is helping to understand what your partner really needs and focus on giving them what they need most. And anytime you give somebody what they need, they always respond with more love. That's the key, is how to generate that love again and again and again. Because in the beginning of a relationship, it's so automatic. Just what happens is a biochemical reaction to newness stimulates a lot of pleasure in the brain, like ice cream stimulates pleasure in the brain. So we all love it. You can love your partner if they're stimulating lots of dopamine, but that is the brain chemical of newness. One of the aspects of it is newness. And so you feel all that love in the beginning, which softens all of the differences that we don't understand. We just make excuses for our partner and no big deal. And suddenly a big deal because we're not making as much dopamine. And dopamine goes away, the high levels of it, when the newness goes away. Familiarity sets in. We get to feel comfortable, but we lose the attraction, we lose the interest, we lose the motivation. And that's part of my new work, which is, one of the biggest problems couples in the modern world, since I wrote Men Are From Mars 25 years ago. One of the big complaints people have is lack of connection, lack of passion, unwillingness to make a commitment, not feeling that intimacy that we're all looking for. And the newness in the beginning will produce that feeling of that. But when newness goes away, it's not there. What's necessary to sustain that connection and that passion and that interest and that motivation is two aspects: authenticity, and the other one is polarity. You have to have the polarity of what's masculine and feminine. When women become more masculine, men just lose interest. And when men become more feminine, women lose interest. In the beginning, it's kind of interesting. It's fascinating. It's like, oh, we're all just the same. We can be anything we want to be. But to be an authentic person means that there's parts of who you are, like as an authentic person, I'm different with my grandchildren than I am with my children.
Yeah.
I'm different with my children than I am with my wife. I'm different with my wife than I am with you right now in my work, in my relationship with God. All these relationships, we have a different hat we wear. And somehow people think that in their marriage, they can just put the hat they want. Whereas I'm pointing out that if you want sustained passion in a marriage, women need to put on their really feminine hat and men need to put on their really masculine hat. You know, when I'm with my grandkids, I can put on my feminine hat very easily, be very nurturing and playful and fun. But when I'm with my wife, if I want to sustain that passion and attraction, I need to make sure I'm putting on my masculine hat, and she needs to make sure she's putting on her feminine hat. And that's what a relationship is today, in my opinion. A soulmate relationship is a relationship that supports you and going more deeply into your authentic self. And what's happening today as women go further to their masculine side, they disconnect more and more with their feminine side. And a relationship can help her to find that if you have the right tools. And there's actually skills to do this that have never been employed on this planet before. This is a whole new problem. And also, what women can do is how to respond in a relationship in ways that will strengthen a man's masculinity. Because women are, how do I get him to do this? How do I get him to do that? Why is he not interested in me more? Well, you become the man in the relationship. You've got to become the woman in the relationship. And that pulls up, empowers his masculinity and brings back the man that fell in love with you. And this is like a new skill. And why do men need that? Because, see, it used to be women depended on men for money and for security and safety. Pulled out the masculine in a man.
Yeah.
That made men supermen. But now women don't need us. What pulls out the masculinity in a man? These are big new questions and new techniques and skills. And the answers, it's not simple. This is the biggest book I've ever written, is the answer to that. It's not simple. It's one step after another after another. And each step is controversial. Each step goes against everything we've been taught, because we're in an era now where our expectations in relationship are beyond what they've ever been in the past. We have to learn new skills if we want a new result.
Yeah, totally. John, let me back up and ask you a question about this masculine feminine thing. Basically, what I'm hearing is more women are working, and one could say in their masculine, and more men are nurturing and staying home with the kids or helping raise the kids or collaborative parenting, and are learning relationship skills slowly. You could say more feminine traits. I hear you. And what if someone responds and says, yeah, but this is me being authentic. I want to, if I'm a woman, I want to work all the time and sort of wear the pants and bring home the money. And the man's like, well, I want to be more nurturing. I want to raise the kids. And this is my authentic truth. Are you saying he needs to change who he is and be more like different? I like unpack that a little more.
Okay, that's a really good question. And it's a good dilemma. It's all a dilemma. So there's no woman that just wants to work all the time, as you just mentioned. What we're talking about here is what happened in the 60s was a huge spiritual awakening from one perspective, which is we are liberated. We are free in our consciousness to access both our masculine and feminine qualities. We weren't free before. There's a shift has taken place where we can look at it from a social point of view, like also a spiritual point of view. There's a shift in consciousness. Everything's speeding up. And what that is, increased capacity of self-reflection, which is the ability to access aspects of ourself that are not conditioned. See, women in the past were conditioned to be one way. Men were conditioned to be another. Cultures for thousands of years is all about conditioning men to be more masculine, women to be more feminine. We now can self-reflect and change our conditioning. And the way you change conditioning is to recognize what works and what doesn't work. And so what we felt after World War II is it doesn't work for women anymore to be confined to the home, and they wanted to go out and be more independent. And it didn't work for men to have to sacrifice their lives and go to war and keep creating war in the world. in the 60s. Here I was, hippie with long hairs and beads and bell-bottom pants and fancy belt and,
Yeah.
getting high and demonstrating for peace. This was the opposite of what men used to be. That was not manly to do that.
Yeah.
But we all broke free, and women broke free to become more masculine. And certainly my wife has a job. I support her in having that job. 50 years ago, men didn't support their wives in having jobs. And, I take a lot of time for fun in my life. And women expected men to do all this tough, rough stuff and, do none of it. Well, we share a lot of things now. So there was a freedom to express for women their masculine side and a freedom for men to express their female side. And we've just gone too far. That's all. And how do you know what your authentic self is? This is the whole key, because everybody's unique and different. That's always been my message. It's just that if you have a woman's biology and a man's biology, there are still differences, and I'll explain them today. But if you're a woman and you go too far in expressing your masculine qualities, it feels really, really good. And then you're suddenly stuck over there and you can't get back. That's the problem, is women are lost today. And the symptom of that is they're overwhelmed. It's like a war cry. I watched it in the 90s and 2000s. It just becomes more and more women are saying, oh, there's so much to do. I don't have any time for myself. I have to do this. I have to do this. You never heard men saying that in the 90s. Now, there's a few very sensitive guys today who might be saying that. But bottom line is, men have a whole different biology and a physiology that doesn't become overwhelmed like that. Whereas women's brains are different. Their hormones are different. They take on way, way too much when they go to their male side. They need to come back to their female side, which is to not do it all. Mm-hmm. You see, one simple principle. Here's one. Every chapter is a different principle of the book, but here's one. What is female power? There's this whole thing about empowering women to do it all. I can do it all. I can do it all. Yes, you can do it all, and you won't sleep at night. Yes, you can do it all.
And you'll burn your adrenals.
That's right. You burn out your adrenals. You get cancer. You get hormonal imbalance. You have menopausal problems. You have to take hormones because you can't make female hormones. All this medical stuff, all this stuff, much of it, not all of it, is due to this imbalance of going too far out of balance. And the key here is finding the balance of your masculine and feminine. So women go way too far to the doing side. They're on their male power. Okay, we all have male power. Men and women have masculine power. And what's to find that power? The power to do it all. I do it all. I can do it all. And there's the female power. What is the female power that we all have inside of us? It's the power to have somebody do it for you. Just think about it, ladies listening. What do you want to keep doing it all? Would you rather have somebody at least part of the time do it for you? That's what feminine power is. It's the power to, feel relaxed, feel happy, feel receptive, feel loved, feel responsive, feel stress-free. You don't have to worry about it. Somebody's going to take care of it for you. Trusting, accepting, loving, appreciating, these are all feminine qualities which women today are greatly missing. Particularly, it shows up in their marriages, because it's in their marriages, which is instinctively the most intimate part of their lives, where there's the potential to create the most femininity. That's where women can experience the greatest femininity, is through intimacy in a sexual relationship. And so what happens is all of the suppressed femininity of the day creates a dissatisfaction inside, a pent-up dissatisfaction. Something's incomplete. And then they come home and that incompleteness gets projected on their husband, and he's the brunt of all her problems. That's from the female point of view. She's basically unhappy. There's not a woman that comes to me for counseling over 35 years that doesn't come in wanting to change her husband rather than change herself. It's always going to be his fault. And the irony is, the reason it's always his fault is one of the qualities of femininity is not accountability. Accountability is a masculine quality. Accountability is you're going to your male side, where you go, okay, how am I contributing to this problem? You see, I'm a successful man because I'm accountable for anything that happens to me. I also have a successful relationship, as I mentioned before. Because if there's a problem, I take time to come back to love and figure out how I contributed to that problem and make an adjustment and change it, learn a new strategy, learn a new approach, and then give more love. That's the key to it, is love. But accountability is essential. Now, what happens is when women are way on their male side, think of a pendulum, and
Mm-hmm.
you hold the pendulum way over to one side and let go, it's going to swing way over to the other side to find balance.
Yeah.
It doesn't swing right back into balance. It swings back further out of balance on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like so challenging for women, because when they go away their male side, to come back to their female side, they have to go even further to their female side than women have ever gone before. And then to be able to eventually come back to balance. And so what that means is she has to have greater introspection in terms of not what she feels, but the emotions that give rise to her feelings. Deep inside, the unfulfilled needs, she has to feel those needs inside. And you'll see most women today, they go, oh, I don't need a man. I don't need a man. I just want a man. No, you got to feel your need for his love. You have to feel your need to not have to do it all. Feel his need for affection, the need for sharing, the need to let him penetrate into you, to go into your feminine side. That's a challenging thing. It's going further than ever before. And so as women swing further to their female side, one of the qualities of femininity is emotion. So she's going to be more emotional than her ancestors, who are already more emotional than men. She's going to go even more emotional. One qualification there is men can always be more emotional than women if they're on their female side. And men can go to their female side, and they do. When men are experience cortisol, cortisol is a major stress hormone, not adrenaline. That's an early stage. But when it gets to cortisol, men's hormones start going out of balance. And it's at that moment, when his hormones go out of balance, that his testosterone, the masculine hormone, starts converting into female hormones. And then suddenly he becomes more emotional than women. Mm-hmm. So yeah, men can be emotional, and negative emotional is what I mean by that. That means they're way out of balance when they're that way. And women become detached and unable to fall in love, because when they're in the cortisol state, they go into a state of detachment. And they go out, they don't even know what they feel. They don't even know what they need. They don't even know that they value intimacy until they go away to the masculine side. Then they swing back to the female side. And so what you get on the female side is non-rational thought processes. See, the masculine side of us is rational. The feminine side of us is non-rational, pure emotion. So suddenly she's feeling irrational, which she didn't want to admit that. She's got to hide that from herself even, or to other people. She's also non-accountable. She has no sense of accountability, because if she was to be accountable in that moment, she'd be on her masculine side. Her soul is trying to bring her back to her female side, where she feels victimized, which is, unfortunately, it's the place women have to go in order to find their femininity and then find their balance, which is to let go of the victimness and be accountable, come back to their male, go back to their female. Just imagine a pendulum swinging back and forth, trying to find its balance point.
So let me ask you, John, let me ask you a couple of questions about this. I want to get back to the masculine side for a minute. I feel like I'm understanding the feminine side quite a bit based on how you're talking about it. And it seems like if I had to add there, she's going to have to learn to trust that going back to her feminine side is going to work for her. Because a lot of women, I imagine, are not trusting their guy, and they have a story that their guy is not trustworthy.
They always, right? That's their big thing. It's always one thing he does wrong and suddenly I can't trust you. It's totally irrational thought, but it's there and it needs to be honored, and men have to understand it's temporary, it's passing, and so forth. It's the big issue for women always on their female side is to trust others. And for men to come back to their male side is to care, to stop. What men do is they go, oh, I don't care anymore. Well, if she's not happy, then I don't care. Well, then I'm not. And I don't have any energy. Motivation is a part of caring. When you care about something, you're motivated. So men have to learn how to stay motivated. Women have to learn how to trust. So these are your masculine, feminine sides, some qualities of them. There's many, many qualities. Sure. In the book, I list all these male qualities, female qualities, just to sort of point it out to us. And for, some people who like to oppose me will say, well, how can you define what's masculine and feminine? Well, it's all common sense. Again, this is all common sense. But what's great about science is that we have actually factual information. We have information, for example, that when you're emotional, estrogen levels are going up. Now, when you're not emotional, your estrogen levels are going down and your testosterone levels will go up. And particularly in men, when testosterone goes up, their estrogen levels go down. So there's like a seesaw effect with these hormones. So what I've done is just taken all the behaviors that increase testosterone and call them masculine, because men, the masculine hormone, every man needs 20 to 40 times more testosterone than his wife. You know, I've got like 1,000 times more testosterone than my wife, just because as she's gotten older, she has less testosterone. I have more testosterone than I had when I was a younger man, which is a universal phenomena in his cultures.
Huh.
And our culture, a man my age would have, you know, a third of the testosterone I have. I don't take testosterone. I use the skills of my relationship to sustain my testosterone. Whenever you feel successful at something, testosterone levels will go up. Whenever you meditate, testosterone levels will go up. If you can quiet your mind, whenever your mind is quiet, your testosterone levels go up. If you can, you know, challenge yourself, testosterone goes up. If you can not complain, like that's death to men. All these new age guys are all whining and complaining and sharing their feelings and feeling victims. All that stuff, you know, you were just cast out of the village a long time ago. If you did that, you were seen as a wimp. Well, today women are asking men for it. You know, they're saying, oh, tell me how you feel. And what are you feeling? Yeah. You know what happens then? She loses attraction for him. You know, I went through this back in the early 90s when everybody's trying to get men to open up and share all their feelings. And I'm not against that, but it has to be in the right context, not in the context of sharing with your partner. Your partner's not your therapist.
Hey, the Relationship School here, interrupting John and Jayson to give you a quick heads up about the next Relationship School course. All right. The Deep Psychology of Intimate Relationships is the 9-month class you never got in school. All right. And it's 2 semesters long like college, but it's kind of on steroids. And you're going to get turned inside out, and you're going to come out the other side way more empowered in your relational life and way more educated on how relationships actually work. Okay. So here's what one guy is saying about his experience who's currently halfway through the program.
My name is Brendan McCormick, and my background is in psychology and spirituality. I'm halfway through the deeper program and the coach's training program with Jayson Gaddis at the Relationship School, and I'm feeling super blessed. I used to think that relationships weren't even necessary for my greatest interest in this life, which is personal growth and development. Now, every day in my life, I experience the power of relationships for personal growth and development. I recommend this to anyone who is interested in learning more about themselves and the world around them, anyone who's ready to get out of the endless suffering of victimhood and take responsibility for their life, as well as anyone interested in having truly loving relationships in their life without having to sacrifice their authentic expression. Thank you, Jayson.
All right, it's been really fun to watch Brendan transform himself. So if you want the kind of results Brendan's getting and you want to transform your life and you want to use relationship as the big vehicle, because that's the thread that permeates your life, then come hang out with us, all right? Come join the school. We're enrolling now. If you want to apply, if you want to speak with me or someone else about the school, go to relationshipschool.net/DPIR. That stands for Deep Psychology of Intimate Relationships. Okay, let me slow you down on the male side again, because I'm with you here. And if women are like overly in their masculine and they need to come back to their feminine side and learn to be more receptive and trust, what's a guy, like I'm hearing that basically you're saying guys have gone a little too feminine and now they need to swing back to their masculine side. That's what you're saying, right? Can you give me an example of like what you're seeing out there? Because I still see a pretty strongly, granted, men have made progress here relationally and emotionally. I still, though, in my experience, men are still the ones very hyper-masculine, abusing their power, like just over. I mean, there's a lot of sort of negative maleness in the world, it seems. So are you saying, like, give me a little more sense of, like, have men truly gone to the other side, or are you just talking a very small percentage, or what?
Oh, so far, you would not believe when you have the perspective. So here we have to use the definition of terms. Okay, so first of all, your average man today at 50 has half the testosterone levels he had as a young man. That's the effect of it.
Okay.
That's A. Everybody's wanting to take testosterone because it youthes you, it gives you health and whatever, but there's going to be down the line side effects of taking it. You need to make it. And so what keeps men from making it? Well, here's an example. You see, I know what you want. You want examples of men being feminized. And the irony is it's very hard unless you have this understanding of hormones to recognize it. An angry man is a feminized man.
What does that
You
mean?
see, whenever a man is angry, his estrogen levels are rising, his testosterone levels are going down. So that's what happens when men are on their female side, is they're angry. All aggression comes from men being on their female side. So this is what's happened today, is we got, just today, all these big shooters and everything. These are men way out of balance. They're angry men. They're not able to make. Another one is young men who all want to, they can't make a commitment in a marriage. Okay. They can't sustain their interest and attraction to a woman. Okay. Masculinity is you're turned on, you bond through high testosterone. When your testosterone goes down in a relationship, you lose the bond. That's how men bond. When you bond, you primarily want your partner. So what happens is you'll see, like an example of men who don't commit was often the guy who was a playboy. They were the rare exception. They were the guys whose parents were rich. So he never had to earn anything. If you don't have to earn it, then what happens is your testosterone levels remain low. These were guys who just wanted to play. Okay, this is guys playing. Another example of playboys is guys spending hours and hours and hours watching sports. Okay, this is their female side. Another example is the massive amount of heroin addiction and alcohol addiction that we have today. This is men on their female side. See, female quality inside of us is dependence. When I need something from someone, when I'm dependent on you to be happy, that's my female side. So men have become massively dependent upon drugs, massively dependent on sports, massively dependent on alcohol, massively dependent on pornography. Oh my God, this is just taking it to a whole stellar level. Is how much people masturbate to pornography every day. It's like a phenomena. This is all the weakening of masculinity. And, so you men are losing their drive. They're not all men, by the way, but the masses of men, the majority of men, the man who doesn't commit, the man who gets married and stops having sex with his wife, who stops being attentive to his wife, who stops being interested in his wife. These are guys who are just more on their female side. And I don't want to just put it all on behavior because, as I mentioned to you earlier, my work is mind and body. A big part of this phenomena, besides poor relationship skills with high expectations, you see, we have higher expectations than ever before and no skills to achieve those expectations, which is only going to create more dissatisfaction. Yep. That's A. And B is we have an environmental toxicity that actually lowers testosterone in men and lowers estrogen in women. This is something called pesticides, started back in the 80s and 90s, where we saw this shifting role reversal taking place. And what happened is they started doing these really high-powered pesticides, which when it gets into the soil, it gets into the water system, it gets into our food, it gets into the animals that we eat because they're eating the pesticide food. The pest into our body, this is all proven, and they bind, they're called xenoestrogens. That means estrogens from the outer world. They bind with our estrogen receptor sites. The cells in our body have these estrogen receptor sites. And in a male body, they bind with the estrogen receptor site and send a message to the brain that you have plenty of estrogen. So the brain then stops making testosterone. This is an phenomena. It doesn't make sense at all, but it's a reality. I have a context of making sense of it. But at first glance, it doesn't make sense. If we had more time, I could explain that one. But the biology is such that when your man's body experiences high estrogen, testosterone levels stop getting produced. Estrogen takes the fat in his food that he eats and puts it on his belly. Belly fat then stimulates this enzyme called aromatase, so that when he does make testosterone, it gets converted into estrogen. So he's just in this trap. The older men get, the fatter they get. The belly fat just keeps making more estrogen in their body. So this is a biological phenomenon that we have to confront on a nutritional level, on a dietary level. That's A. But B, we have to then compensate. We have to recognize that estrogen in our body, lowering our testosterone, changes our behaviors, and to consciously be aware of this emotionality of men crying, men getting angry, men being irritable, men procrastinating, men getting defensive, men arguing. All this stuff is happening today. And basically what that is causing That's a symptom of men being too far on their estrogen side, not enough testosterone, being too far on their female side, not on their male side. So
Wow.
flip side of this is women, when they experience the xenoestrogens get into their body, it says to the brain, you have plenty of estrogen. Okay, so now when a woman's estrogen levels are low, what she will actually, and they're not real estrogen, they bind with these sites, but they don't produce the benefits of estrogen. They're false estrogens. So when a woman's estrogen levels are low, she's not in touch with her need for love. In the book I outline, it's 3 chapters to understand actually women's cycle of hormones, how their whole mood, their desires, their needs, what they need at one time of the month is not what they need at another time, and so forth. It's a wonderful process to understand, and your wife makes sense to you, because what happens is 5 days after her period, now her estrogen levels are, for her well-being, for her happiness, her estrogen levels now need to begin to double. Okay, so what will double her estrogen levels at that time is affection and interest by a man, particularly, or in a situation where she's dependent on somebody. And so what happens is she feels dependence on somebody for love, for attention, for affection, for understanding, or for help. Like if a woman during those 5 days doesn't have a man that she can depend upon, she needs to have a doctor that she depends upon, go get an appointment with him, a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, a financial advisor, someone who's significantly helping her that she's dependent upon. It could be a teacher, a guide, someone that knows something that she doesn't, where she is now feeling dependent, getting something of significance for her. That's called a relationship that stimulates estrogen.
Yep.
And that estrogen levels during those 5 days needs to double. Now, let's say that she's being exposed to xenoestrogens. The brain gets the message that her estrogen levels have doubled. So she doesn't seek out love and attention and affection. She doesn't feel the need for a man in her life.
She says, I'm okay. I'm independent over here. I'm fine.
You got it. You got it. So you've got a whole 2 generations now of women. I'm fine. I don't need a man. I don't need relationship. I'm fine all on my own. And to a great extent, that's way on their male side. Eventually, when they go way over there, they will swing back to their female side. Balance is a big part of this whole thing. But at that time, she'll suppress that part of her. It will seem like crazy. It will seem like, oh, I can't share this with anybody. And if she's in a relationship with a man, she just loses her feeling of appreciation for him. You see, appreciation is the fuel for testosterone for men. Come home, my wife's always happy to see me. When I wake up in the morning, she's like amazing. She's always happy to see me. Her mind is still open. There's no problems bothering her. And she just feels that need and dependence on me in her life. It's just a huge surge of testosterone for me. That's the woman's role. But it's very hard for women to find that appreciation. They get caught up in resentment. One of the signs that she's out of estrogen land is when she's keeping score. You know, she's saying, I do this, I do this, I do this. Look what I do. Look what I do. And therefore, I have to do it all myself. I can't go back to my female side and depend on you.
Yeah, keeps her stuck in her independence, right?
Yeah, that's the problem today. And, you know, one other little distinction that I was going to make, which is another one, which is the polarity, is men need love just as much as women. We just need it in a different form. Okay. So I talk all about the different ways love expresses itself. I mentioned one just now, which is to feel that you need a man and you appreciate what he gives to you, his presence, his providing, whatever he provides for you. That's so key. And so women have to identify once they're on their male side, once they can take care of themselves, they can do it all. What do you need a man for? And a lot of women, I ask them that question, they don't even know. They even run away from the phrase, I need. A need is such a very, very important thing. Desire is another important thing. Preference is another important thing, what you like. And when you're feeling in touch with that, that's your female side. That's your vulnerable side. And to go to that place means that when you get what you need, you're really, really happy. So for a man's testosterone, he needs to feel he's providing and fulfilling the needs, the wants, and the wishes of others. Yet he has control of himself. He can't feel somebody's his master. He is his own master, but he also chooses to serve another. And that serving another is to fulfill their needs. When I can fulfill my wife's needs, when I make a difference in her life, my testosterone goes up. When I write a book, I know I'm fulfilling the needs of others. My testosterone goes up.
But if he feels, John, if he feels bad about himself and he's kind of having a pity party or he's lost in his life, it's going to be hard to provide for others. And then he's going to keep telling himself a story that he can't do it or something. Does that keep him in his little box?
Completely. And unfortunately, it's a symptom for him of high estrogen, is where you tell yourself the story that you're not accountable. We that's just a pity party, is all just estrogen. And what, unfortunately, what happens is women need to go to that pity party for a little while, but they have to then go through it to find the emotions that are linked to it and release the negative emotions and come back to love and come back to accountability and come back to recognizing how they're creating all the problems in their life and they're not these victims.
Yeah.
The whole history of men and women is that women are victims, because that's the female side of us. We all have it. But when a man is going to his victim, and whenever you're blaming someone, whenever you have a negative emotion, you're blaming them. Now, whenever you have a positive emotion, you're also, in a sense, blaming them for making you happy. That's the whole part of the dynamic of relationship, is ideally this integration and this simultaneous balance of both the masculine and equality, that I'm letting my wife affect me, but I only let her affect me in a positive way. And that's very challenging. That takes a lot of new skills to do.
It sure does.
And one of the things that is very, very significant is that if you're having sex, let's say you're a man and you're having sex with a woman and she's way on her male side. Now, for a lot of insecure men, that's a wonderful thing, because she's going to want to have sex. She's on her male side, wants to have sex. And so you feel like you don't have to take any risks to get her to have it. You feel like you're desired. And so that's really wonderful. But the problem is once you start connecting with a woman on her male side, to feel connected with her, because we want connection just as much as women, we will become more and more feminine. So women on their male side feminize men. They get more and more in touch with their negative emotions. Whereas when women are having sex with men who are more on their female side, the woman ends up becoming more masculine. So what happens is we end up reinforcing an imbalance by having sex with each other when we're out of balance. Sex is the most powerful thing to establish balance, or to throw us out of balance.
Yeah.
And this is why couples over time will stop having sex on an unconscious level, is, naturally our soul doesn't want to keep going further out of balance. And so we don't feel that good after having sex with a partner. We're going to stop having sex with them. We're not going to be interested in having sex with them. So that passion goes away. When you work on the polarity in a relationship, and I read one of my books is Mars, Venus in the Bedroom, which actually talks about polarity sex. But we're talking today about the dynamics of a lifestyle, the dynamics of a relationship to stimulate polarity. So here's a practical example of that. The male side of us solves problems and provides. The female side of us is receptive and appreciates. So basically you set out and you say, okay, our goal in this relation, day to week, where the man provides and the woman enjoys. And how does he provide what she wants? He has to make the decision, but he makes the decision based upon her input of what she would like to do. Is what would she like to do? She talks about several things she'd like to do next week, not on the moment, not spontaneous. Women need to anticipate for several days what's going to happen to get ready for it. And that whole anticipation stimulates estrogen, particularly if she's anticipating him taking charge. He made the decision of what to do. Making decisions is our male side. You're the leader. That's our male side. And I'm not in any way saying women can't make decisions. I'm not saying women can't lead. I'm saying that when women do make decisions and when they do lead, they're on their male side. And there's nothing wrong with women being on their male side. They just need to make sure that in their life, they have a balance to when they're putting on that hat, their male hat, they need to be able to put on their female hat. And that is in their romantic relationship. And if they do that, they can have the potential of sustaining ecstasy in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And that's just a symptom. Besides, it's one of the most wonderful things. It's also a symptom of balance in the relationship that allows you, after great sex, you find that you're not really trying to change your partner at all. You're very accepting, you're very appreciative, you're very open, you're very trusting, all the wonderful qualities we have we want in a relationship that we often feel in the beginning when we're in love, those qualities come back after great sex. It's like kind of like refueling. And in a sense, when I meditate, I refuel myself to come back to my sense of authentic self and the inner peace that I have and the potential for joy and power. But sex is a way that we do it together, connecting with this ecstasy of the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, literally coming together to become one. To me, it's just recharging that aspect of our connection.
Let me see if I can, let me ask you a question about this. And it's kind of like sex as a metaphor for the relationship. So it seems like she needs to learn how to depend and receive with him, and he needs to learn how to lead and take charge, or?
Yes.
If you wanted to be simplistic about it.
It's more about providing what she needs without having to give up who he is.
Okay.
When he provides, it needs to make sense to him. It needs to be a choice that he makes, not someone just telling him what to do. I'll give me an example.
Give me an example of what he can provide besides like an income for their mortgage. Yeah,
well, certainly if she still depends on him for that, that's a good thing. Lots of couples are both out there making money. And when she's out making money, she's way on her male side. She feels that pressure, that buildup. In the beginning, it's like so fun, it's free, it's independent. We all love freedom, independence. And then after a while, it becomes this burden. And that sense of burden is because her nurturing, her female side is not being nurtured. So one of the key techniques in this book is communication, is basically emotions, negative emotions are the most powerful estrogen stimulators there are. So what there's exercises in there, which is how women can share their negative emotions several times a week. Take 10 minutes to share their negative emotions, which will always lead her back to feeling her positive emotions. Now, this is what's unique about women, is if they can talk about their negative emotions, then there's a connection that happens. So you see, if I start sharing with you my vulnerable negative emotions, things that I don't share with anybody else, that's why they're vulnerable. If I shared them with other people, they would think I'm being selfish. They would think I'm being needy. They would think I'm being unduly negative. They would think I'm being manipulative. I might lose my job. People will think I'm weak. So what women have to go through is all day long, whether they're aware of it or not, they're suppressing their negative emotional responses to life. And it builds up and it builds up and it builds up. She needs to have a place where she feels safe. When you feel safe, that's called estrogen. So feeling safe, I can depend on you. You're not going to hurt me. I can open up to you. So when she shares negative emotions and a man listens, what's he doing? He's actually penetrating into her. See, a lot of people think when you're listening, you're a good listener, you're being very feminine. Actually, no, you're being extremely masculine. One of the most masculine qualities they are is to listen without reacting. And so you're gonna penetrate into her, hear what she's feeling, consciously knowing that this is going to help her get back to a more positive place. But she needs to first go through these negative emotions to feel them and share them and feel that she's not alone with them. Connection. So he hears those negative emotions without reacting to her. Now, that's impossible if all her negative emotions are about him. Right. And that typically is what happens in marriage, is because women are suppressing their negative emotions throughout the day. When they're with him, the island of safety, it all comes out, but it comes out projected onto him. That's called projection. That's called transference. That's called displacement. It just all gets put on him. And it's unfair. It's not right. Suddenly and it's not like she has any control over that. These are psychological phenomena that if there's 15 things that are bothering me, the 16th thing, the straw that breaks the camel's back, is where it's all going to explode on. It's going to be an overreaction. Yeah. So this is a controlled overreaction where women practice, instead of dumping on him about him or being dissatisfied or complaining about him, look at 15 other things in your life dissatisfied about. And suddenly your dissatisfaction about your husband, or you're upset about something he said or did or didn't do, becomes very, very minor. It becomes huge because you've got this buildup of stress inside your body because you're not sharing those emotions. And that is the female side lowers stress by sharing the stressful emotions. The male side lowers stress by ignoring negative emotions. That's another controversial idea. As it hasn't been here for thousands of years, suddenly it's wrong. No, it's masculine. if you need to build up your masculine, you need to, it's not so much suppress, it's to ignore, to look the other direction, which is, if you're upset about something, you put it to the side because it's something you don't know how to fix, and you fix something else. You do something to raise your testosterone back up. Now, as a conscious man, you come back and you can feel those emotions and you can be compassionate towards it, because we're not just masculine, we're masculine and feminine. But we have to realize that's my authentic self is both, but my body is masculine, and I always have to default to my masculine side if I'm under stress. And anytime you have a negative emotion, you're under stress. So for women, when they're under stress, talking about, expressing, and again, for women, they need to go further their female side. So they have to look even deeper to the subtleties of their emotions and share those emotions. Not just, I feel left out, I feel ignored, I feel jealous, I feel unheard. No, feeling sad, feeling afraid, feeling disappointed, feeling frustrated, feeling angry, feeling hurt. These are all emotions. If you feel an emotion, your estrogen levels will surge. And that's what's so important between the male and female, to help her come back to her female side. So the way to do that is learning how to share about other things that are not him. Because if you share negative emotions about him, that's pure blame. Anytime you have negative emotions and you share them with somebody, it's blame. All negative emotions, you make me feel this. So you have to create a space where my boss makes me feel this, the traffic makes me feel this, the president makes me feel this, the plumbing makes me feel this, the other things that are not blaming him. And what you do is you train him a whole new skill to listen to negative emotions without reacting, but feeling empathy and compassion. And this is brain plasticity. Men can eventually learn to do this without reacting inside or becoming argumentative or threatened or whatever. And this is what can happen to women, is they can learn how to share negative emotions to their spouse without blaming him or trying to change him. That's the outcome eventually. But you start by looking at things that he's not in control of, and you say, just to get closer, let's talk about my feelings, not yours. We're not going to take turns. And after she's done, he doesn't do a controversial idea. Well, men will go, these feminine guys, well, you talked about your feelings, I'm going to talk about my feelings. No. Or she's going to say, I shared my feelings, now you tell me your feelings. No. That's got to bring him come back to his masculine. Now, does that mean he can never talk about what's going on in his life? Of course he can, but not if he's stressed. If you go at a chart, we all know that little emotional charge inside. That's what you don't talk to your partner if you're a man. If you've got an emotional charge, stop talking, even get away from her and do something that will raise your testosterone. Because if you're getting negative emotions and you're a man, your testosterone levels are turning into estrogen. You need to stop that. And for women, if they're like detached and not feeling connected to their partner, it's not changing your partner. Give up trying to change your partner. You think, oh, you're not caring about me, you're ignoring me, you're not interested. No, it's about you. You're not being feminine. You're not opening it up. Men run to an open legs. You open up and men are there. Share your vulnerability, but you have to learn how to do it in a way that doesn't blame him, pushes him away.
Yeah, totally. John, I want to just honor the time here. I got a few rapid fire questions for you as we wind down, and I want to hear about your book. This has been really rich. I mean, there's so much more I could ask you here, and I just want to be careful about taking too much of your time. Two rapid fire questions that are coming up right now as I listen to you is, number one, it's kind of a two-part question. So in that case, in that example, do men, if they sort of just hold their emotion, the charge inside, and not necessarily need to talk about it, is this where a men's group is helpful? Or are you like, no, men don't need to even do that?
No, men's group is essential. It's fantastic to do that.
Okay.
And playing golf is fantastic. And playing basketball together is way better than watching it on TV. A little on TV is fine. It's this addiction I was talking about before. Yeah, men's groups are fantastic. And there's a distinction for men, which is whenever you're into victim, make sure you're also laughing about it, laughing at yourself for being such
totally. And then the second... Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
and
there's a lightness that men need to bring into it. Except, here's the exception, except unless the problem you're sharing with other men is big. Okay, if it's a big problem, that means that huge amounts of estrogen will get produced. And so therefore, it's very masculine to create a space where you're not trying to change anybody, but you are going to explore those problems. So when it's big issues, there needs to be a cone of silence and space where men all connect with your pain. If it's big, it's just the little stuff, the whine and complain about little stuff you have to be light about.
Okay.
So this is
Nice.
a good men's group, very powerful.
Awesome. And then the second part to that question is there a masculinity crisis? What do you think about that when people say there's a masculinity crisis?
It's huge. It's massive. My book that's coming out next year is called Boy Crisis, and it's all about what's happening to the boys. And a lot of it has to do with that estrogen thing I said about the environment. It's just knocking down testosterone. It's feminizing men. There's all this gender confusion going on because the environment is causing all of this hormonal imbalance inside the body. So it's kind of like, what am I? I don't know. And what do I feel? And what do I think? And we're so affected by hormones, and now we're so affected by the what's called hormonal disruptors in the environment that it's causing big problems. So my book, Boy Crisis, helps mothers and fathers, kids who can't make a commitment, falling behind. Statistics, I mean, like one of the statistics that's always most shocking is twice as many women are graduating from college today as men. You know, education is key for most people of being able to have a job and make money. And suddenly you've got twice as many women doing it, making more money, wondering where's the man that's making as much money as me? And that's what women are looking for. They do not want to feel like they're supporting another man. It's like having another child, and it kills the passion over time.
Yeah.
And they try to make it all okay in the beginning, but the reality is they're not having passion after a while, and that's the reason.
Yeah, and I
So
just
that's
wanted.
I mean, 4 times as many boys commit suicide. You know, there's
more men
twice
are
as many boys
incarcerated. Yep, suicide.
problems. Yeah, there's a lot of problems that males are having right now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks. So I just wanted to get your take on that. And when you say we're feminizing sort of boys, I don't hear you necessarily making women wrong. You're saying there's a part of us, both masculine and feminine, that if we overcompensate on one side or the other, whether it's masculine or feminine, it's not good for us. Would you say that's true? You're not like making women wrong here.
I'm clearly saying that what both men and women are doing isn't working. And also our environment's not working for us. I'm out of the realm of making right or wrong. It's just like what's working and what's not working. And clearly what women are doing isn't working effect on men. And what men are doing is not working for women. And that has an effect on themselves as well. So this is a reality, which if you want a marriage to work, you got to get out of the realm of judgmentalness and right and wrong and figure out why is this not working out and be a team to figure it out. Most people have no knowledge to do that. I spent my whole life figuring this out. It was a big project to figure this out and help people with this because it goes against everything that I hear being said in the news and schools and psychologists and many therapists, not all therapists, trying to move people in the wrong direction, thinking they're doing the right thing. It doesn't work. So forget about right or wrong. What needs to work today?
Yeah, cool.
Certainly it doesn't. It's not right to feel victimized by somebody, but hey, if it's what you need in order to get back to balance, then it's what works. So we have to look at what works and we have to look at the environment. And I love talking about I just want to take a moment to talk about the body, which is this environmental toxicity. I have a resource at my website, marsvenus.com, of short little videos on how to do things like stop taking testosterone, make testosterone, how to balance your hormones as a woman without having to take hormones. These things have been around a long time. The Chinese figured out, the Koreans, there's 3 Korean herbs and a product which is called RX for Women that helps women balance their hormones with herbs that will help counteract this environmental toxicity. For men, there's one called Tongkat Ali Pure, which helps to negate that little message to the brain that says stop making testosterone, and also helps to eliminate the estrogens from your body. That's several fixes in there that I talk about in terms of blood sugar issues. Also, when you have high blood sugar over a period of time, what that will start causing is brain degeneration, which throws your hormones out of balance as well. And so there's things that naturally will help stabilize your blood sugar without having to have a perfect diet. I'm all into good diet, but I just know that people don't follow perfect diets unless they're really sick and they have to. So it's a lot of supplements that I suggest to people depending upon their different goals and challenges that they're facing. But this testosterone estrogen one is pretty simple on a biological level to start correcting. A big part of it for men is fasting. Last week I fasted for 2 days and, doubled my testosterone. One of the most powerful things for men's testosterone is to fast. Also, when it comes to masturbation, to fast from masturbating. There's research that shows that when a man doesn't ejaculate for 6 days, on the 7th day, his testosterone levels will double. And it will stay up there until you ejaculate, and then it will drop down a bit and come back up. And so basically for married men, if you're not experiencing desire and passion, fast from sex. If you're having mediocre sex, your wife's not responding, is your testosterone isn't high enough to get her to respond. Her estrogen's not high enough to get you to be interested. There's balance. This polarity needs to be there. But for men, it's like if you go 2 days without eating, you can just eat some greens. It's like a French restaurant, it's fantastic. Same thing with sex. If you have a partner and your sex is becoming mediocre and boring, what you do is you just go without it for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, it will be much better. And then go without it for 6 days, and the 7th day will get better. And then you can do as much as you want. But if it's flailing, or you're having signs of testosterone deficiency, you're too emotional, you get angry, you're irritable, you have anxieties, you're not sleeping well as a man, practice fasting from ejaculating for a while. These are now proven. I mean, the biology shows if you go 6 days without ejaculating, your testosterone levels will double, which is super for men.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway, there's lots of tips like that are just so important for people to understand.
Yeah, cool. And so your new book can be found on Amazon, but all these supplements and your book also can be found, I'm assuming, on your website, and that website's marsvenus.com?
That's correct, marsvenus.com. So people check that out. Lots of free videos on there and so forth to help educate people. Okay,
cool. And John, I just wanted to get your quick take on, as we wind down again, adult attachment. You don't seem to, you're not talking about that. That's kind of big right now. What do you think of the adult attachment movement?
Well, I don't really know that much about it. So I'll have to go pick up a book on it. What book would you recommend?
I would probably recommend Stan Tatkin's work, Wired for Love, just about the neuroscience and of adult attachment, how we sort of play that out in our adult lives.
All right, Wired for Love.
Just curious, wanted to get your take.
Well, what I've read on attachment theory has a lot to do. See, I look at things through the lens of Mars Venus, and so one of the issues with attachment is people need their space, and some people don't need their space. And my message is, men, if you're not taking your space, you're out of balance with your masculine. And when a man takes time to be alone, it's not a problem with attachment or detachment theory. It's he's being a man and he needs to take that time alone. The cave time was like a basic thing. And any theory that doesn't take into consideration a man's much greater need to detach and a woman's much greater need to attach, if it doesn't take that into consideration, it's missing a major part of reality here. And so if a woman is overly attached to her partner, you can say, oh, you have attachment issue. Or you could say, what's happening is you're not expressing enough of your masculine side and you need to get a job. That would be the solution.
Right.
Or you need to be expressing more of the emotions that you have about other things other than your partner. You're depending too much on them. So you can look at it from the spectrum of, okay, maybe she has an attachment issue. Or you look at a woman who has she's overly detached. She could have an attachment issue. I get that. But the practical application, the solution is always coming back to, in my mind, the gender differences and the practical solutions right now, regardless of your childhood, of how do you interact in a way that works. I used to always do therapy on people and, go into your childhood and everything. And I still think that's good work. But you can take, if you want to be a pilot, you can have a screwed up childhood, but you can be trained how to successfully fly a plane. And that's a very complicated thing to do.
Yeah.
To me, to have a successful relationship, it's like you need training on what to do, regardless of your past. And regardless of your past, you can learn how to do it. And by learning how to do it and actually creating the love that you need now, it will actually begin to heal your past. As opposed to people who have wounded childhood, they don't have any role model of a functional relationship. That's why they have a wounded childhood. And even if you don't have a wounded childhood, by the way, no role model of a successful relationship in this millennia. because everything has changed around. We literally need new skills for this, but I will check out that book. I'm always interested in new things.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Great, John. And I'm, you may not know this, but I started this relationship school to help young people get this kind of education that you're talking about here. And I have one question for you about that. If you were to come in and teach like a guest class to a bunch of high schoolers or let's say college kids that were, 17 to 22 years old, and you could only teach them one thing, what would be the thing that you would teach them about love relationships?
I do it, and it's so wonderful. As I explain to girls, guys are going to be really, really interested, and then once you give them a blow job, they're going to lose interest in you. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with basically, they're wired up to be attracted to females, to go after them. Your job as females is to postpone that process so he has a chance to get to know you on an emotional level or a mental level and appreciate you and like you. If he doesn't bond with you on an emotional, mental level, then the only way he bonds with you is through sexual feelings after the ejaculation. What happens is there's no connection at all. And he will now form an association of loss of energy with you. And suddenly he just won't call you back. He won't be interested in you. And you're going to be thinking, what did I do wrong? You did nothing wrong except allow him to get too close too soon. So you need to go slower with the whole thing. Otherwise, he will get what he wants. And you think giving him what he wants is going to make him like you more. Actually, after he ejaculates, he will always like you less. And you have to know that. It's a biological phenomenon. So that's one of the things I help them understand.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That you need to take your cave time. Cave time is not wrong. You don't want to spend too much time with a girl. You need to hang out with the guys and spend some time with a girl, because spending time with the guys or spending time at home, pulling away from the relationship, allows you to rebuild the masculine hormones. If you get too close to a female, your estrogen levels get too much. And then what happens is you feel suffocated and you don't know why you don't like her anymore. It's because you got too close too soon. And the same thing for girls is they want to encourage, find out what a guy likes, what he wants, get him to talk more and so forth. Then he becomes like a girlfriend and you'll lose interest in him. And you wonder, why do you lose interest in him? Is you're becoming too much the same as him, rather than creating a little polarity in the relationship, creating a little mystery in the relationship without having to open up his female side. Another one is for girls is to realize that guys, when that desire for you, that's his motivation to please you, you have to practice, and very, very important, and this all the way up the line, not just teenage girls, practice never giving more to a man, to a guy, than he gives to you. And that means, holding back from giving to get. Whenever you're giving to a guy, hoping that he'll like you more, he'll like you less. He'll actually like you more if you ask him to do things for you. And that's the whole key thing, is get him to do things for you. And then you can respond with authentic appreciation. To appreciate him for doing nothing is to lose him. Yep. To get him to do things for you and let your response be to what he's done for you. That's how males bond. We successfully bond when we feel like we made a contribution and done something for you.
Cool. I'm going to take that one with me. Thanks. That's a great one. No one's mentioned that before, of course. Well, John, I really appreciate all the amazing frames here you've given us on relationship, the masculine and feminine, the health, how it impacts our health, estrogen, testosterone. This has been extremely rich. And for the listener, I'm really hoping you guys got a lot out of this. So John Gray, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. And just one more thing for the young girls, and this is actually for grown women too. Yeah. When they get a boyfriend, they'll tend to drop all their girlfriends. And what that does is that makes her overly dependent on him, which will cause her to seem needy to him, and he will lose interest in her. She has to maintain her friends. Always maintain your separate life. Don't let a boy take you away from everything. And that's what typically happens. You shift from your girlfriends to this one guy. You want to notice your personal life. You want to sustain your personal life separate from him, and think of a guy as just dessert, and your life is the main meal.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks. And everybody can find you again at marsvenus.com.
Yes, marsvenus.com.
Okay.
And for the younger ones, actually for everybody, my daughter, my youngest daughter's in her 30s, and she also gives great advice for young guys to understand girls and for women to understand themselves. She calls it the feel-good woman, how to feel good all the time.
And is she on your site as well?
Yeah, she's there as well. It's not my wife. They'll see me and a woman there. That's my daughter.
Okay, cool. What's her name?
Lauren Gray.
Okay, Lauren Gray. Awesome. So you can find John and Lauren Gray at marsvenus.com. Thanks so much, John. I really, really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for what you do.
All right, nice. Okay, a lot in there to break down. I'm going to break it down in a second, but first, your action step, definitely go check out John's work at marsvenus.com. marsvenus.com. So you'll notice John's daughter on there. You'll notice John on there. And he's got a ton of courses, books. And the guy's written a ton of books, okay? So there's a lot going on his website and certainly a ton of resources if you connect to John's message. Another action step, here's my action step for you, is to really notice and have a conversation and notice if some of what he's saying rings true for you in your own life around this masculine, feminine stuff. Is this useful, and can you use it to help you in your own marriage or relationship? And have a conversation with your partner, an ex-partner, a close friend after listening to this podcast and just be like, hey, what do you think? Is this true for us? When I'm in my masculine, whatever that means to us, does it mean more purpose-oriented, directionality focused, and you're more in your feminine, more nurturing, relational, more empathic? When we're in that dynamic, is our relationship sexy and on point or not? And do we even agree with these terms? So just try it on. Okay, that's your action step. Is like dig into the frames that John's using in this podcast and see if they're true for you, and have a conversation with someone close to you. Ideally your partner, but if you're single, a close friend, someone else in the Monogamy Smart Couple group who's listened to this podcast, and talk and just share what it's like for you. Okay. All right. So really interesting gender dynamics and discussion here. Now remember, he's not mistaking man equals masculine and woman equals feminine. A lot of people get confused here with David Deda's work, Alison Armstrong's work, and John Gray's work. The trick is if you subscribe to the notion that all of us have a masculine side and a feminine side, and you even try on those terms that you have these two different energies in you. You could call them yin and yang. I'm hip to this. I like yin and yang living inside of me. Remember, I talk about how I disown my feminine for years, or you could say I disown my yin side, my nurturing side, my feeling side, my sensitive side, because no one but me made it a problem. I mean, my dad did, and male culture can, and so I squashed that side of me because I didn't want to get more hurt. And so I like using masculine, feminine language at times. And I don't equate that with man, woman, better, worse, right or wrong, all right? So, but some people get really charged here, and I understand that, especially if you have it that the masculine side is, quote, better than the feminine side, for example, or the feminine side is bad or wrong, or vice versa. I get it. And I don't think that's what John's saying here. It certainly wasn't what I wouldn't be saying, and I'm not promoting. But I think it can be really useful in my own life to consider the possibility that I've got two different energies living inside of me, a polarity, if you will, and I'm into wholeness, embracing both sides of me, or you could say all sides of me, wherever it falls on a spectrum of certain traits and certain characteristics. I want to be a whole person, all right? And it can be reductionistic, and I get that some people have a problem with it. Yeah, no problem. So here's the thing. So John, yes, I think this is where David Deda and John are similar, where it can be a little overly simplistic. Also, John's not using, and I'm finding this in his book, there's no citations about research and medical articles about his frames on hormones. testosterone and estrogen specifically. So that raises suspicion in some people. He's just basically saying it from his own experience that testosterone goes up for a woman when she's in her sort of working mode and what he calls her masculine, and it goes down for men when they are in relational mode and their estrogen goes up. I think these are really interesting and potentially useful frames if you want to try them on. And it's overly simplistic because he's not citing real research. And if you're a science-based person, you want real research backing up your claims, which is why I like interpersonal neurobiology so much and attachment-based work, because it's very heavily researched, especially the attachment stuff. So just consider that, okay? Now, I would have asked John about this had I actually read his book before the interview. Now, that's my mistake. But now that I'm digging into it, I'm like, oh, I have more questions for him. And I would ask him, well, where's the research backing up the hormone stuff? All right. I do love his frame on role mate to soulmate. I think that's outstanding. I agree, we've gone from role mates, my parents' generation, where the man does this and the woman does that, to soulmates, where we're all equal and we have equal opportunity here, even though, again, some people would argue that, no, women are still the marginalized culture here over men. Men are still in the dominant positions. But if you read Warren Farrell, The Myth of Male Power, you would see that men in their own ways are marginalized, given the suicide rates, the blue-collar jobs, going off to war, on and on. Read Warren Farrell if you want a deeper cut on that, okay? But I like the role mates to soulmates. We are living in a more complicated time where we have more access to personal growth tools, and we have more access to both sides of us, or all sides of us, and it makes actually relationships more complicated. And you've got to be more on your game to work at making them function well. You know, we're beyond the role mate thing. And I will say that gender roles in my marriage work sometimes. There's just sometimes where my wife will say, God, I love being married to a man or having a man live in my house because I do some manly things around the house that she doesn't want to do. And vice versa. I'll let her speak for herself on that. We'll do a podcast on that sometime. And then other times it's not useful at all to have gender specific roles. All right. Now, what I also maybe disagree with here with John is that I don't find that I'm a talker and I'm a relationship oriented guy, relationship oriented husband. I like to stay up late processing, which John Gray would say takes me out of my masculine and increases my estrogen and kills the buzz in our relationship. But I would say that that's just not that simplistic in my marriage. In fact, the more I process and talk, sometimes with my wife, the more open she becomes and the more sexy our vibe is. So it actually doesn't, this is where I disagree with the sort of polarity work that some people promote around I've got to always be, quote, in my masculine to then have my woman surrender to me. That's just not my experience. Some of the time I see that that's true. And other times, what helps my wife feel safe in her nervous system is me being extremely nurturing and caring. And other times it's me being just like a guy's guy or something. So, it's just not always true. Okay. All right, wherever you stand with John's frames, I think this podcast is really useful. Play with it. Notice if this stuff is true in your own dynamic. And again, leave us a comment in social media, please. And finally, make sure you get your copy of the Smart Couple Quote Book. Here's what I'm noticing. I get John Gray's book or I get other books, and while there's lots of great information in there, they're dense, they're thick. And most people will not be able to hang with the length of talking that we relationship teachers like to do. So see if you can get the Smart Couple Quote Book and get a really short, distilled, the essence of like a dynamic and how it can help you. So instead of going and buying a big, thick book, buy the Smart Couple Quote Book. Right? It's full of quotes, guys. Fun, digestible, penetrating quotes that are going to help you. And you can flip to any page and in a minute have a really good download about a relationship dynamic. And if you don't resonate with that one, flip to another page and find one that does work for you and that is going to help you. So I'm skeptical with people's attention span these days that they can handle big, thick relationship books. I want to write one, but I'm like, I'm not so sure people are going to actually read this thing. So I'm going to do my best to create doable books for you. And my next book after this that I've got planned, that I've got the outline going for, is going to be like that. So in the meantime, go grab your copy of the Smart Couple Quote Book. Okay, relationshipschool.net/smart couple takes you right to Amazon and right to the order now button. Boom, and you've got it. All right. Finally, if you want to practice, you join the Relationship School Roots community. In Roots, you get 10% off our courses and our products and our merchandise. And if you're thinking about signing up for the Relationship School this year, which we are now enrolling, I'm going to do a bunch of free web classes in December. Then you get 10% off that course. All right. So it's going to save you hundreds of dollars if you sign up for our big Deep Psychology of Intimate Relationships course, which will permanently change the way you do relationships. Permanently. Yes, that's a bold claim, but think about it. You practice for 9 months doing anything, you're straight up going to get better. All right. So relationshipschool.net/roots to join this crew of amazing people practicing every other week. All right. Thanks, folks. Have a beautiful rest of your day, morning, evening. Talk soon.